Welcome to the Confident Calm and Clutch Car Ride Conversations. I'm your host, Valerie Alston, here to help parents and young athletes spark meaningful dialogue about mental toughness, resilience, and confidence. Whether you're heading to practice, a game, or just running errands, this podcast is your go-to for building stronger relationships and lifelong skills, one car ride at a time. Now, I'm really excited to bring another piece of my interview with Robert Toss from Hoop World. Essentially, it was a full circle moment for me. He was asking me about how I became a mental performance coach and where that journey actually started. Spoiler alert, it all started in the batter's box for me during a high pressure moment in a high school softball game that didn't exactly go the way I'd hoped. But it did set me on a path that changed everything for me. So we dive into the pivotal moment, how it led me to working with sports psychologists as a teenager, and how those early mental skills gave me an edge, not just in athletics, but in life. Right? And I talk a little bit about what it was like to carry the weight of perfectionism, what I learned about pressure and performance, and why that experience sparked a passion in helping others navigate those same mental barriers and battles. You'll also hear a little bit of how I transitioned from an athlete to coach, my work with soldiers, and how I found my way back to working with teen athletes during the COVID era. When I started noticing the same things over and over and over again, some anxiety, fear of failure, perfectionism, all getting in the way of confidence and consistency. And that's really what inspired me to write my book, Confident, Calm, and Clutch, which I will have in the show notes for you if you'd like to check it out. But in this episode, I share more about how all of that came together and what young athletes are really struggling with today, and how, at least I'm hoping, to help build those mental skills to meet the moment, right? So whether you're a parent, a coach, or an athlete, or someone who's just curious about the behind the scenes of mental toughness, I think you'll really connect with this episode. So have a listen. I hope you enjoy.
Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us on Hoop World today. Today we have joining us Valerie Alston, a sports mental performance coach who helps young athletes build confidence and, of course, mental toughness. Her book, Confident, Calm, and Clutch, gives parents practical tools to support their aspiring athletic kids. Valerie's approach comes from both her professional training and personal journey as a former collegiate athlete who struggled with performance anxiety. After overcoming her own mental blocks, she dedicated her career to ensuring young athletes develop healthy psychological skills from the start. She works with athletes of all ages and skill levels, from youth leagues to elite competitors. We're super excited to have Valerie share her straightforward strategies that help kids perform better under pressure and, of course, most importantly, enjoy their sports more. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Valerie.
Thank you for having me, Robert.
I'd love to start with how your journey into the mental performance coaching started and what drew you to it, and
Yeah.
maybe start sharing that a little bit. And we've got a lot of questions.
So my journey started as an athlete. So I was primarily a softball player. I played other sports all through high school, but softball was my competitive sport. And really, the start of my journey was between the end of my sophomore year in high school, the high school season. My team was playing for the state championship, and it was the first inning, and it was bases loaded. I was a number 4 hitter, and I had played at this point travel ball and stuff. I had played in national tournaments. I'd been in championship games. It wasn't new to me, but for whatever reason, this game, I could not get my heart rate to slow down. My whole body was just jittery, and I choked. Struck out looking. I still contend it was not a strike, but this is not a pitcher that was nowhere near the caliber that I was playing against in travel ball. And why I was so freaked out, it just didn't make sense at the time. I now know what was going on, but we ended up losing the game 2-1. It was a really tight game. And essentially what happened for me is that then into the next season, the high school season specifically, I took on this idea of that was my fault and I have to be perfect, right? If we're going to win, I got to be perfect. And essentially what happened is I started playing really tight. And my dad, thankfully, being he was my coach for a lot of years, and we spent a lot of time in the cars talking and traveling to and from games. He noticed that I wasn't playing with that typical killer instinct that I had. For the first 2 to 3 weeks of the high school season, I was really timid and I was doing okay, but not great.
Yeah.
And so this isn't normal for her. And so he got me in touch with an actual sports psychologist in my area. And we worked through some things. He helped me realize that I was carrying that quote unquote blame that wasn't mine because I had two hitters behind me who could have also gotten hits, right? It's a
Yeah,
team
yeah.
sport. I wasn't the only one playing, but I was taking on all this pressure. I was taking it all on myself that I had to be the one that was going to win every game or make the play or do the thing. And so he taught me some really important skills about turning my brain off so I could just play, doing things like singing while I was at the plate, like keeping it simple, see ball, hit ball, helping me did a lot of breath work with me, helped me train that. And within a couple of weeks, I started to really notice the difference and see that, okay, I was taking too much on. I was doing, putting the world on my shoulders. And thankfully, for the rest of that high school season, I started performing very well. And I have to say, we made it to the championship game. I got the game-winning hit in all four games. Just saying. Team effort. Okay, it was a team effort. But I did get a critical RBI in each game. And then ended up knocking in the winning walk-off run in the championship game, which was like wins the championship. So that was my first introduction to it. And then, so I played in college as well at the University of Minnesota. And I realized that like some of that training really helped me as a freshman coming in when I realized that some of my fellow freshmen were like terrified. Oh my gosh, it's college. And I was just out there ripping it and having a good time. And not that stayed as the competition got hard. I would not say that I was perfect. But I realized that I had a bit of that edge. And in my degree, I was taking kinesiology classes. I had to take a sports psych class. And I really got introduced to more of the skills that I didn't have time to work on individually with my sports psychologist back in high school, my mental skills coach. And so I got exposed to it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This stuff is really helpful. So I took stuff from the classes I was using to help me in college. And then as I was getting ready to graduate, I was like, I like this. I think I want to go get a specific degree. And so I pursued my master's degree at Boston University.
That's nice.
And then I started work in the field. I've been working with the Army since 2008. It's been my primary job, helping train mental skills with soldiers. And then how I got back into athletics is there was a military family that went to my gym, whose young sophomore at the time was playing softball. And she's like, hey, I just need somebody, it was COVID. I just need somebody to work out with and like train with. I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And that kind of sparked it back to, I want to get back to these teenagers.
I love it.
I think that
teenagers,
since 2020.
Okay. And obviously COVID, pretty amazing, crazy time for all of us. How have you evolved your kind of approach to these young athletes?
I don't know that my approach has changed much since 2020 because since then it's been a little bit the same. Yeah. But I think what I've realized is that there are a lot of deficits in youth today, right? They're struggling with anxiety and pressure and perfection and all these things that really previous generations have not dealt with. And the research is pretty clear. I think it has a lot to do with social media and the way they're being, even society is training them. We have this safetyism culture that like we're not allowing kids to experience the natural consequences of their actions. Yeah. And so they're starting to fear failure and it's, hold up, that's normal. So there's some things, it's not all their fault. But I think what I'm trying to do is really be compassionate that they are not growing up in the same environment that I did. I did not have to deal with social media until me and Zuckerberg are the same age, right? I had Facebook in college when you had to have a .edu, and it was like wall. Yeah, it wasn't. They have to contend with a lot more. They have access to so much more information that we never had.
Yeah. So. And then you wrote a book about it. Which
I did.
Tell me about that and how you got there.
Yeah. So the book was really inspired by the clients that I had early in 2020, 2021, seem to have the same challenges, right? It is being confident, trying to, how do I transition from practice? Like I'm great at practice, but I get in a game and I fall apart, or I get so nervous that I can't perform the way that I normally do. And so I was hearing the same things from my clients. So I was like, why don't I try to help more people and write down
essentially the frequently asked questions, if you will, the frequently dealt with problems. Let's just write them down and put them in a book, and maybe more people will find some answers that can help them moving forward.
All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed a little bit about my story and how I became the mental performance coach that I am. But if you're enjoying this podcast, Car Ride Conversations, I would be so grateful if you could take a moment to actually leave a review. What that does is your feedback by reviewing it helps it move up and be presented to more people. And the more teens and parents and athletes that we can reach with this podcast, the better. So please help me in bringing this show to more people by giving it an honest rating and really just telling me what you like about it. All right, so let's get into our conversation for today. Again, a quick reminder of the rules. There are no wrong answers to any of the questions that we discuss. Make sure you're taking turns, talking and listening. Remember, this is to create dialogue and conversation. Try to minimize those distractions as best you can. And remember that you can pause at any point in the questions if you want to stop after each individual question, or you want to listen to all the questions and just go where your heart desires. That's fine too. So let's dive into our conversational topics for today, our discussion questions. Have you ever had a game or a performance where you felt like you had to be perfect? What was going through your mind in that moment? And for parents, what did you believe about mistakes when you were growing up? What was your culture? What were some of the lessons your parents told you or the coaches and teachers in your life? And how has that influenced you as an adult? Our second question, what's something you felt responsible for, even though it wasn't 100% on you? Okay. The intent of this question is really open up some dialogue about the shared responsibility in team sports and in life. And hopefully you as parents and kids can really talk about where to share the blame, when you should take it all on yourself, but bring in some balance to that system. So have a conversation about that. Our third question, when you're in tight moments, right? How do you usually calm yourself down when you're nervous or anxious before, whether it's a game moment, maybe a test at school, or just any other performance moment that you engage in as a human? And this is for the parents too. So please talk about that. What are some strategies that you've used before? Maybe it's music or breathing or positive self-talk, right? But discuss, what have you tried? What works? And maybe share some ideas. And our final question today, what does confidence actually mean to you? How do you think it comes from results or something else? And so discuss this a little bit as a family and talk through, where can you pull your confidence from? And if you'd like to learn more about this specifically, I believe episode 3 of the podcast dives into this much more fully if you haven't listened to it yet. But go ahead and start talking about what you think about confidence. All right, y'all. Remember to just keep that conversation rolling, and let's make sure that these car rides count. Thank you so much for joining me on Confident, Calm, and Clutch Car Ride Conversations. Again, if you found this episode helpful, please share it with at least one parent or coach that you know in your life that could use a little extra inspiration. If you're looking for more weekly tips and mindset shifts and conversations that help you and your athletes stay confident, calm, and clutch, no matter the scoreboard, please subscribe to my newsletter at www.confidentcalmclutch.com/newsletter. If you have any suggestions for new topics that you'd be interested in hearing about, there is a link in the show notes below that you can offer up topics to me, something that you're interested in discussing. You can also DM me on Instagram or Facebook at Alston Coaching. I look forward to hearing from you and learning more about what you want to talk about in these episodes. All right, y'all, have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you in a future episode.